You can listen to The Professional Left wherever you get your podcasts, on Netroots Radio, or at our website, proleftpod.com, where you can also contribute to this podcast. There's a PayPal button at our website, or you can mail us a letter and or contribution at P.O. Box 9133, Springfield, Illinois, 62791.
This is the podcast for November 11th, 2022. It's not safe for work.
Recorded live from the Cornfield Resistance, where Democrat Nikki Budzinski is our new congressperson-elect. It's The Professional Left with Driftglass and Blue Gal. Yay!
And this is the first time in the history of this podcast. We started recording in 2010. This is the first time in the history of this podcast that we have a Democratic representative for the Professional Left.
Well, I don't know that that's 100% true. I think we might have done an episode or two while I was in Chicago.
And then you had Jan Schakowsky as your representative.
That's right. So,
but I didn't. Yes.
No, you didn't. No, you have been in a drought for how long? I mean,
I have personally not had a Democratic representative since I lived in Massachusetts.
Jesus.
I left Massachusetts in 1996 and moved to Alabama and lived in suburban Birmingham, which was Republican, gerrymandered Republican. They cut out the black part of Birmingham and gave that one district and put the suburbs in another. And so I had a white Republican representative for the 14 years I lived there.
Yep.
This is great. And Junior Dude and I did a little bit of political shoulder rubbing.
Yes, you did.
We went Monday to a Get Out the Vote rally at a union hall in Springfield, Pipe Fitters Local, and we're in the front row. We didn't get to shake hands with anyone except for Tammy Duckworth. I got to sit and talk with Tammy Duckworth for quite a little bit.
How did her election go, by the way? How did things work out well for her?
It went fine. Yeah. Okay. It's kind of funny because I was looking at some election charts and so forth. Do you know how much the Democratic Senatorial Campaign Committee gave to Tammy Duckworth to help her get reelected?
I'm guessing
$0.
About $1.50.
They didn't need to give her a dime because...
Damn it. It's like they don't want her to win. It's just crazy.
Like they know she doesn't have an opponent and no one is looking to make any waves to get her out of office at all because that's just a waste of money. But I knit her daughter... When she had a daughter, I knit her a sweater and got this baby sweater to her through Driftglass channels, local Driftglass channels.
Yeah.
And so I was able to say to her, I'm the lady who knit your baby a sweater and gave it to you through a congressional candidate back. And she said, my daughter's 4 years old now. And I went, oh, come on. They're just growing so fast. Yeah, kids grow so fast. So
was she hinting?
She pulled out her phone, showed me a picture of her daughter at the Children's Museum, and we just had a nice little chat.
Okay.
And then I told her how proud we were.
I thought she was hitting you up for more knitting because the Senate committee wouldn't give her any money. So
no
she's
money for sweaters for her kid. Yeah, she's like, Marjorie Three Toes got an SUV with her campaign dollars. I didn't even get a toddler sweater. No, so then election night. Junior Dude squired his mother.
He did.
You stayed home and watched X-Files. And
I did.
And Junior Dude took me out to the Nikki Budzinski watch party.
Yeah.
And I loved how Nikki Budzinski, I didn't say this to her, but she was wearing an outfit that was a color that in our house, we call this color fuck you blue.
Right.
Because it's bright, clear, Democrat blue.
Yeah.
Lovely outfit. And Junior Dude got his picture taken with her.
He did.
And I was able to tell her that we're very proud of her. She is a Dick Durbin acolyte.
Yes, she is. Absolutely.
Democrats, really do run this state from top to bottom for the most part. Not in terms of rural counties. I get it. There's a lot of grumbling rural counties that have Republican gerrymandered seats, county commissioners, etc. But what I'm saying is statewide, when you talk statewide, thank you, Chicago, statewide, and in terms of the state house, And in terms of our Senate candidates and congressional delegation, we have more Democrats than Republicans in the congressional delegation. We have 2 Democratic senators, et cetera. And the Democratic Party in Illinois has basically 2 wings that sometimes have little conflicts between one another.
Yes, they do.
And that's not worth talking about, except to say that one of them is run by Pritzker and Pritzker money, which is, he won it by 13 points. And the other is Dick Durbin, who is really interested and does the work to get candidates on the ballot and find good candidates for House races, for other positions, for government positions, and so forth. And yes, sometimes there's a little turf battle between one or the other.
Yeah.
And you know who the Durbin people are, especially in Springfield, where everything is politics and everything is state government. You know when it's a Durbin person versus a Pritzker person.
Yeah.
And it's, you shrug your shoulders, because that's an embarrassment of riches as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. At
but
the working politician level, I saw Dick Durbin at the grocery store a week and a half ago in his athleisure outfit buying groceries for his wife. He's not that. He's a very down in the trenches workaday.
He and his wife are both hardworking for the local community people. Yeah, they really are.
His wife was at a meeting I was at this morning.
Well, yeah.
Taking notes
was she there? Was she sober? We always joke about that. Like,
she's always
class
sober.
Goes to these community meetings that have to happen at 7:30 in the morning because they are business people, mostly local business people attending these things, and they have to go open up their shops. And Mrs. Durbin is very, very involved.
She is
in community service. But we always make a joke like 7:30 is Loretta Durbin. Was she sober? That's always my joke. Just a little joke,
But Nikki,
very hardworking person. But yeah, so Nikki Budzinski, our new Congresswoman, Nikki Budzinski, who, by the way, is under the age of 75.
I know.
she's young, so she's got lots of years ahead of her to serve, and she's a Durbin pick. She's someone that Dick Durbin, I forget what the word I'm looking for. He recruited her. That's the word I'm looking for.
Well, mentored
Durbin
her.
recruited her to run for this seat. Yeah,
and she worked on his staff and was.
Yeah, I mean, she's somebody that's well known among his people. So she will be, and I don't say this as an insult at all, she will be a competent backbencher in the House.
Yes, like it used to be.
Like it used to be. Mm-hmm. She will have bills and things in bills and things in spending that benefit her district. She will be competent and not corrupt. And there won't be, I don't see Nikki Budzinski having a spending scandal. She's not going to decorate her office like Downton Abbey.
Yeah, like Aaron Schock. That's right.
Like Aaron Schock did. Yeah, yeah. So yeah, I think she'll do great. I almost feel like we should do a news roundup, Driftglass, just because all the news this week, given that it's Election Day week, is squarely in our political media wheelhouse. I do want to stop for a minute, though, and remind everyone, and I hate to take you back to this, but I think it's important. Think back to Monday and how stressed out you were.
Ooh, yeah.
And the reason I ask you to do that is both of us were very stressed out. We had to have what we call stair hugs, where I step up on the bottom stair in our house so that I have 6 inches to give Driftglass a hug because he's 6'8" and I'm not. And gave him a stair hug just to calm each other down because it's very stressful waiting for election results, right?
Mm-hmm.
On Election Day afternoon, I went to my church's charity craft afternoon where we make blankets for at-risk youth. We make bibs and wheelchair, I don't want to call them purses, but like catch-alls, pouches that go on wheelchairs to carry things for nursing homes. We're making Christmas gifts for nursing home patients. And it is all charity. It is all for people who might be forgot during the holidays or might be forgot during the year. And we work year-round on this stuff. So I'm working on Election Day, working on blankets that have been outlined by the school we've adopted for at-risk kids who have broken homes, kids who have learning disabilities, whatever. We're helping kids in need. And I focused on that day, and it helped me so much because I said to Driftglass, we're not just in this to win elections. We're winning elections so we can help people. And Driftglass says, no, I want to crush my enemies.
That's right. I'm in this for money, and I'm in it to crush my enemies. And that's it. There's a quote from...
you and Carrie Lake. I mean, right. Seriously.
There's a quote from Conan the Barbarian, which I'm going to screw up. And there's the leader of the tribe is asking, what is the good? What is the happiness? Yeah. And they all get it wrong. And what about you, Conan? To crush my enemies, cause their women to cry, drive them before me. That's it. That doesn't actually motivate me. It's just sort of the frosting on the cake. But
this is what we mean by, in all seriousness, chop wood, carry water.
Yeah.
What is the good you can do today?
Right.
And so, yes, the election's over. It went way better than the media was allowed to predict.
Yeah. But to your point, I didn't mean to cut you off because regardless of the outcome of the election,
right,
kids in need would have gotten those blankets.
And those kids are going to be in need regardless of who my congressman is.
Exactly.
And I have that work to do.
That's right.
So we all have that work to do. And I'm so grateful for every win. I'm sad for Beto. I'm sad for Florida and Texas.
Yeah.
I'm grateful for the wins we had, sad for the losses, hopeful for those races that aren't decided yet. But really, the good we do. What did Hillary Clinton say? Quoting, the United Methodist Creed: "Do all the good you can. Do all the good you can every day." So I don't mean to take anyone back to that, PTSD anxiety that we all had on Monday, but at that day, that's the day that you have to do good. And the day after the elections, you have that day to do good. And that's what we're about. So I gave Driftglass a quiz this week.
Yes, you did.
I'd like to give our listeners the same quiz because this is kind of funny.
And this is an important setup, I think, because we weren't just lounging on the back deck, drinking Cuba Libres, musing over our good fortune. I was at the grocery store in the canned vegetable aisle, and my phone rang, and my wife said, "Guess who said this?"
Yeah, because... I said, I just found a quote, and I have to ask you right now, who said this?
Because
I couldn't wait.
Because that's how we roll.
That's how we roll. So we said, I love a political quiz. Let's do it.
Sure, right in the middle of the
standing in the grocery store.
Sure, fire away, woman.
By the way, Driftglass is a wonderful partner in life. He does grocery shopping and laundry and all kinds of wonderful things. Yeah.
Other things that we're not going to talk about.
Here it is. This is the day after the election. Who said this on cable news?
Mm-hmm.
I was surprised because I thought with the inflation rate and the price of food and the price of gasoline, with the crime rate that we have seen, I thought all those things would have made for a very big Republican night. And I have to say, much as I think it's despicable, the Biden strategy of demonizing Republicans, I think did have an impact and will probably become part of the definition of the Democratic Party.
And so I'm standing there like an idiot in the vegetable aisle going, man, there's like 50 people it could be.
Yeah, there are like 50
I'm
people.
all over the map. Well, Chris Cillizza would say something stupid like that. David Brooks, yeah, he's in the running. Maybe Charlie Sykes. I fired off 4 or 5. Got them all wrong. Because
it was Newt Gingrich. Newt Gingrich, who built his entire career demonizing Democrats in the filthiest ways imaginable, defined the Republican Party as demonizing Democrats. It was a noun, a verb, blame Democrats. If you look up on Google, Newt Gingrich blames. His shtick
has always
been whatever disaster, a stabbing in Paris, some crime wave, some horrible murder.
A woman drowns her children.
Yep. And it's liberals' fault. It's a Democrats' fault. And that's how he kept getting on TV.
Yeah.
I'll come on and talk about the horror of today, and I'll tack on Obama's to blame for this, Democrats are to blame for this. This is liberals' fault. And it got him a seat on the Sunday shows. It got him a seat on talk shows. And that it was the laziest commentary.
Well, got his wife.
Just demonize Democrats. Yeah.
He got his wife an ambassadorship to the Vatican.
Yeah. His mistress, his 6-year mistress / wife. Yeah.
Right.
Extramarital mistress.
But currently, Newt Gingrich is doing something else.
He is. What's he doing, Driftglass?
He's fighting a Georgia grand jury subpoena.
And not doing a very good job of it.
No.
Now, he has to testify to his alleged Driftglass, involvement in advising Trump administration officials on steps they could take to reverse the result of the 2020 election.
Yeah.
And he stayed loyal to Trump because Trump gave his very Catholic mistress/wife her dream job.
Yeah. Yep. And he went along as a Vatican layabout.
Yeah.
And then he came back and he's right back in the mix because Newt Gingrich, and for the reason, the person you should blame if you ever run across them in public, in a vegetable aisle, perhaps in a store, and you just want to spit in their food, is David Gregory.
Yeah.
The former host of Meet the Press that everyone forgets about because everyone says, it was
Chuck Todd this, Chuck Todd that.
It was Chuck Todd, and before him, it was Jesus. No, it wasn't. No, it really, really wasn't. But David Gregory made Newt Gingrich his special project to keep rehabilitating Newt Gingrich on purpose for ratings at the behest, presumably, of NBC. But I'd like to go back to a gentleman I spoke of earlier named Chris Cillizza. Christopher Cillizza, who is a beast of a reporter, man. He's everywhere. He's all the time.
He won a major award this week, too. I think he was worst person in the world.
He did.
At some point, yeah.
In our other podcast, the No Fair Remembering Stuff podcast, a little spoiler coming up here, a little spoiler. When David Brooks infamously said it's going to be Rubio. It's going to be Rubio. He was on a panel on Meet the Press, and the other panelist, one of them was Chris Cillizza. Yeah. So he is just as big a symptom of the sickness and corruption and depravity of the mainstream media as anybody else. I just don't write about him because I don't have an infinite amount of time. But this is
boring.
He is boring.
He's an intellectual lightweight. So yeah,
he is.
Yeah.
Well, this is him in late October of this year. This isn't 20 years ago. Of this year.
This is weeks ago.
This is literally like 2 weeks ago. Here's a headline from the thing he writes for CNN: "Why the midterms are going to be great for Donald Trump." Great for Donald Trump. Here's Chris Cillizza yesterday on CNN on the air. Donald Trump is a habitual loser. Now, you might notice a slight contradiction between those two things. You can't be great and a habitual loser. You can lose once, but if Donald Trump is a habitual loser, it means he's been losing for a very, very long time, which would not make sense if you start calling him awesome and great and how the midterms are going to be great for him. But Chris Cillizza is a CNN employee who can never be fired. And no one has been able to explain, other than the obvious fact that CNN is a shithole that employs awful people, why Chris Cillizza keeps having a job, except for the fact that his job, very much like Brooks and everybody else, their job isn't to be right. It is to tell the people who watch their stupid shows comforting fairy tales. It's the reason people watch Falcon Crest. It's the reason watch X-Files or General Hospital. They want the story being told to them that they want to hear. And they seek these people out because they tell them the lies they want to hear. The difference is General Hospital never caused a plague in the real world. And Falcon Crest, everyone at the end of the day when the TV went off knew those people were fictional. People actually believe that assholes like Cillizza know what the fuck they're talking about because they're on TV and they look like news people, but they don't. And you know what? Chris Cillizza was not alone, was he, Blue Gal?
No, he was not. As you may expect, there are now too many confident pre-election dire predictions about Democrats from too many savvy pundits to keep track of. And, it's not our job to just start picking these off and talking about, oh, he's wrong, he's wrong, he's wrong, he's wrong.
Yeah,
but it was a theme. It was a theme and a general consensus that we're going to report it this way. And that's Chris Hayes. We have this up at Crooks and Liars. Chris Hayes had a multi-minute montage of a sampling of cable news. Here are some others. Axios employee and frequent Bulwark podcast guest Josh Krasher from November 2nd. The tide is turning for Republicans. The big picture. That's so Axios. The big picture. Just a few weeks ago, Republicans seemed to be on the ropes, thanks to a slate of polarizing MAGA-aligned candidates with seemingly strong Democratic opponents and a relentless Democratic focus on abortion. Now, though, all of those fortunes seem to have been reversed.
Because all the chicks forgot about abortion, right?
Yeah, all the chicks forgot about it. We just forgot about our bodily autonomy.
Oops, forgot.
Klein Brook of Bloomberg Opinions. Democrats have alienated the voters they need most. with its catastrophizing fundamentalist narrative about America. What?
That's us.
The party has alienated the exact voters it needs to persuade.
Yeah. We're
CNN
terrible.
senior reporter Steve Collinson said, Democrats confront their nightmare scenario on election eve as economic concerns overshadow abortion and democracy worries. Well, that wasn't true.
Yeah. Well,
that was not true.
It was true of all the pundits out there because, and there are hundreds of these that literally you can just stick a stick in Twitter and online and find dozens and dozens of these hot takes, all using the same language, all wrong in exactly the same way by people whose job it is to theoretically not be wrong. These are the Hillary's emails of this election.
Yeah.
And I guarantee you that not one single pundit and not one single media corporation is going to change a damn thing just because they happen to be completely, utterly fucking wrong. But because I am me, I would like to focus on a very specific subset of these pundits who scold Democrats for not being like Republicans' ecosystem. And this is an ideological template that Beltway pundits and Never Trumpers, who are also Beltway pundits, impose on everything Democrats do. It goes like this. If the GOP is really an existential threat, as Democrats claim, why aren't they taking it seriously by doing, and this is always followed by whatever terrible advice they happen to be offering that day. Advice which always takes the form of, sure, Democrats claim they don't want to defund the police, but people believe they do. It's out there, and Biden must respond. Or perhaps, sure, trans athletes in Michigan high schools may seem like a small issue, but the radical left, yada, 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 alienates normal voters. Just endless shit like that all the time. As some of you probably remember, about 5 or 6 months ago, many savvy pundits, most of them, got all the way up on their high horses to attack Democrats for running ads in Republican primaries that said, more or less, so-and-so believes the following crazy things. Forced birth, everyone should own a bazooka, so forth. And so-and-so is too conservative for our state. That was it. That's all they said. This was Claire McCaskill's strategy against Todd Akin, and it worked. This drove the savvy pundits crazy because, well, first of all, that's objectively hilarious.
Yeah.
Because these ads did nothing more than accurately describe someone like Darren Bailey, for example, as the nut job that he is. And what the savvy pundits didn't want you to think about was that the only way such ads could ever be effective was if the GOP base really was as batshit as we liberals have always said they were, and as the savvy pundits have always sworn they weren't. So they're stuck in this little bind.
I can only speak for the Darren Bailey ads because I haven't seen the other races. But the Darren Bailey ads reported very accurately on Darren Bailey's own record as to what he was saying on the primary campaign trail. It was not, elevated to anything but here's what he said. He's too extreme for Illinois. And that's it. And of course, what happened was MAGA Republicans saw those ads and said, that's my guy.
Too extreme. I love that shit. And they sopped it up with a biscuit. Yeah. Anyway, out of all the hundreds and hundreds of federal and state races happening across the country, Democrats ran such ads in only 13 races. And I did the math a few months ago, and it came to something like 0.77% of all races being run. So it wasn't exactly a trend sweeping the nation, but it was an opportunity to berate Democrats for the sin of doing politics. And the pundits grabbed it with both hands and they ran with it.
Here is what Politico was writing in August about the GOP primary in the race for New Hampshire's 2nd District House seat. Democrats are once again meddling in a GOP primary. This time in a competitive New Hampshire House district with the goal of elevating a far-right candidate over a moderate backed by GOP Governor Chris Sununu. The intervention in the race to take on Democratic Representative Annie Custer comes from an unlikely source. Democrats serve a new political action committee that backs Democratic candidates with public service backgrounds. The group has booked some $94,000 on cable TV to boost Bob Burns, a pro-Trump Republican who is campaigning as the, quote, only pro-life candidate, unquote, in the September 13th primary.
Mm-hmm. And I just want to emphasize this was everywhere. NPR was doing this. Politico was doing this.
But the thing was, the fact that Politico and NPR and everyone knew this was out in the open, they had to declare, the Democratic Governors Association, which helped Pritzker pay for these things, and Pritzker paid for them. I mean, come on. Because Pritzker gave huge money to the Democratic Governors Association. But it said paid for by on these ads. This wasn't a secret.
No.
And Politico knew about it. So, it wasn't a secret.
Yeah, because Axios wrote about it. The Bulwark was full of just self-righteous assholes going, if Democrats actually believed in democracy,
they wouldn't interfere.
It wouldn't interfere. Now, mind you, these are the same people who were begging Democrats to change parties to vote for Liz Cheney. They're exactly the same people saying, what Democrats should do? They should change parties. They should change party affiliation, get over in the primaries, and vote for Liz Cheney. Like, fuck you, really? But Blue Gal, this is going to surprise you, I know. Of all the scolding pundits, the most perfectly distilled example of this came from the king of sternly lecturing stupid Democrats on how politics should be done, Mr. David Brooks of the New York Times. And here is a headline from his column of June 30th, 2022. Why on earth is Pelosi supporting the Trumpists? And the slug line below that, the moral idiocy of promoting the extremists. Which sounds bad, you got to admit. I mean, he put Pelosi and moral idiocy in one big word spurt. So here's a quote. The Democratic Party is behaving recklessly and unpatriotically. So far, Democrats have spent tens of millions to help Trumpist candidates in Republican primaries. So that sounds even worse, right? Because it's not just Pelosi, but Democrats generally who are behaving recklessly and unpatriotically. It's Democrats who've spent tens of millions of dollars to help Trumpist candidates, which, tell me more, David Brooks. Now I'm hooked on this story. In the next paragraph, Mr. Brooks goes on. In Illinois alone. Oh, okay. In Illinois alone, the Democratic Governors Association and Democratic Governor J.B. Pritzker spent at least $30 million to attack a Trumpist moderate gubernatorial opponent. Got that? So, the lion's share of those tens of millions of dollars that Brooks was shitting himself over from Democrats came from one guy, my governor, who was actually a multi-billionaire, a real multi-billionaire, and so certainly had the money to spend and then some. So I'd like to personally thank Citizens United for making that possible.
Yeah.
And Pritzker's ads were mostly, is Darren Bailey too conservative for Illinois? Period. That was it. So let's jump ahead now and discover how these recklessly unpatriotic Democrats and their tomfoolery, how did that all work out in the end, Blue Gal?
Of the 13 primaries in which Democrats spent money in Republican primaries, the most extreme crackpot lost in 7 of those primary races. So there were 6 left where the crackpot won.
Mm-hmm.
And of those 6 crackpots who won, whether or not they were helped by Democratic ads or not, Democrats won all of those seats on Tuesday. All of them.
No, that can't be true.
The extremists on both sides have to be loose, Driftglass. No, not in this case. The extremists on one side.
But it was moral idiocy. I have the paper in my hand. It was unpatriotic moral idiocy.
And
to do
here's the deal,
things.
Driftglass. Here's the deal.
Yeah.
These crackpots lost by at least 10 points. All of them lost by at least 10 points.
Uh-huh.
J.B. Pritzker beat forced birth crackpot Darren Bailey by 13 points. As I said on election night, rented mule territory continued. Maryland Governor Wes Moore beat far-right crank Dan Cox by 23 points.
That can't be right.
Josh Shapiro, thank God, beat Confederate cosplay elections denier Gab fan Doug Mastriano by 13 points. And then in the House races in Michigan's 3rd District, Hillary Schulten beat far-right John Gibbs by 10 points. Maggie Hassan, New Hampshire Senator, beat crazy Don Bolduc, the one who said he didn't have he couldn't name anybody, but he had proof that cat litter boxes were in schools.
The cat litter guy?
Cat litter.
She beat the cat litter guy, but like 20 votes,
by 10 points. She beat him by 10 points.
Okay.
Democrat Annie Custer kicked Bob Burns' ass by 13 points.
Oh, okay.
So let's have some accountability for the Democratic Party investing in letting Republican voters know about the extremism of their primary candidates and promoting those candidates for the general election.
In 0.7% of the races, they did this.
Right.
Half of them lost, so they weren't even on the board. The rest of them got their asses kicked by the Democrats. I call that pretty goddamn good politics.
Yeah. And do you think that the political journalists will learn their lesson now not to chide Democrats for playing politics with political races?
Yeah, you and I have been in this game for like a minute, Blue Gal.
Yeah.
And based on the entire history of political journalism and punditry in America, no, they will not learn anything. Nothing at all. They're going to continue firing and marginalizing liberals and making sure we don't exist and putting centrist, never-Trumper, Democratic scolds on the air to explain to us why we should be more centrist in everything, because centrism will solve all of our problems.
Yeah. Well, and I've mentioned the characters before, but in Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, the Belcerabons are the ones who gain telepathy.
Oh, that's
and to protect themselves from having their thoughts read, they just blabber on nonstop about nothing all day long. And that's the job of the cable news pundit, is to fill the space. We've talked about this many times. Fill the space with nonstop chatter between commercials for pharmaceutical companies.
Well, and
it's not to inform us on politics, but given that incredibly powerful platform, they use it to chide Democrats and prop up Republicans over and over and over again.
Yeah. And it is like sports radio.
Yeah.
It's talking about the game and talking about the draft and talking about how things are going. And this coach sucks. And that player should never have been drafted. And oh my God, none of which has any actual consequences to real humans in real life.
Yeah.
It's the same sort of let's sit around and bullshit about this subject. The bar room subjects, sports, sex, and politics. And the old joke about that, right? The guy starts talking about politics in the bar, and the bartender says, "Shut up, we don't talk about that here." Starts talking about sports in the bar, we don't talk about that here. Starts talking about, well, then the guy says, "Can I talk about sex in the bar?" And the bartender says, "Sure." And the guy says, "Well, then go fuck yourself." And that's
all right.
But those are the three topics, of universal conversation. And at no point has anyone in the sports universe been elevated to the point of actually affecting the process of democracy in America by their around the table bullshit, because everyone knows what it is. But these people are fucking worshipped as this wisest, sagest people ever. And it is just maddening that everyone knows they're wrong all the time. So, here we are.
So I want to bring up something that Jesse Waters talked about this week, which I can't believe. Can't believe I'm actually doing that. But Jesse Waters was the one who brought it up. Trump and where's the money?
Yeah, well, okay, which, that's true.
As I predicted, if you have to blame somebody after the election for not doing as well as you hoped to do, Donald Trump is to blame for this.
Where did all that money go?
And particularly, yes, as Jesse Waters asked, where is Trump's Mar-a-Lago war chest? As you wrote in our notes, begun this clown war has. Jesse Waters, the Dennis Miller skin tag come to life, on Fox made it clear that the knives on the right are now all the way out. McConnell spent close to $400 million on those Senate candidates, so either some of these candidates are garbage or the money is not being well spent. But Trump is sitting on a massive war chest. Where did that money go? I think we know, Jesse. I think we do know, Jesse. And Jesse Waters also explained that the Fox News secret sauce and why it's not working this time, there's just not the hatred for Joe Biden the way there is for Barack Obama and the Clintons. Sounds about white.
Yeah, it sure as hell does.
White misogyny? Yeah. There's not a hate Biden vote out there. They tried with the Brandon thing, and we took that really back, right?
Well, and they tried with Joe Biden is mentally incompetent, and he's been captured by the AOC wing of the party, who, as you know, are made up of lesbians and colored people. And
I gotta say, I did think it was interesting that Ted Cruz's explanation for the midterms was really interesting. Ted Cruz said the reason that Republicans did poorly and Democrats did well in this year's midterms were because Biden governed from the liberal wing of the party and excited his base.
Yeah.
And I thought,
sure, that's what he did. Yeah. I'm sitting over here being excited. I'm semi. Yeah. I'll just say that. I'm semi.
So I would just want to make two more points about this.
All right.
About these midterms. One is you and I were immediately making jokes when we found out that the midterms were not going to go in a red wave sort of way.
Yeah.
Said, it's time for another Republican autopsy.
Sure.
And this is part of No Fair Remembering stuff. I'm sure we'll do an episode about it at some point. The Republican autopsy of 2012, 2013, where Paul Ryan and Mitt Romney and a bunch of centrist Republicans, quote unquote, got together to come up with a plan to appeal to Hispanic voters, be reasonable about everything, and that was going to make them win in general elections. Totally forgetting that you cannot win a Republican primary that way.
No, you cannot. And
cannot.
No. And I as you actually kindly dragged this out of my archives. I wrote a whole thing about the road ahead for the Republican Party, which they can just have as their autopsy if they want.
Right.
But we'll do that next week. But it really is.
It's Trump fuck your feelings. That's
it. That's your
party.
The
future of the Republican Party is those two people.
And you can build whatever the parameters of those people's human ability to be a political party. That's your limit. You can't go past those people because those people are your party, and nobody wants to join those people. That's where the money
comes from. That's where the energy comes from. That's where the primary voters come from. And unless you evaporate Fox and Newsmax and start a reprogramming schools, reprogramming, prisons, and put all your voters in there and brainwash them again into sanity, you're not going to change anything.
No, can't. You're stuck. You're stuck.
So Republican voters will never not be addicted to their own rage farts and their own white supremacy fart jars. Smell. What was it you said? Jars of Rush Limbaugh's beer farts. They
rebreathing Rush Limbaugh's
all the
they
time.
And they have memorial beer farts now of Rush Limbaugh because he's dead now. And just a little sniff. Oh, that's so good. Remember the good old days?
They get high on it. And the nanosecond that going against Trump and for DeSantis or trying to mellow out the Republican base, the second that costs them one rating point, Fox News will be back to promising that Mitt Romney will win in a landslide.
Absolutely.
Like they did in 2012. And that's what all these polls were. And we're going to have a red wave. And we're going to do is because that gets them their viewers. Secondly, and this is something that I think a lot of people have missed. Donald Trump is the first Republican administration after Citizens United. That horrible decision brought all the grifters to the yard because there is now unlimited money.
That's right.
For people in politics.
Mm-hmm.
Marjorie Trailer Park Green bought a $92,000 SUV with campaign money, and no one's going to take that away from her. No one blinked. She's the number 1 or 2 fundraiser in the GOP. She's number 1 right now. Yeah. And it's mostly in one party. The grifting is going on in one party. There's always money in the bananas voter shack. And whether Lauren Boebert gets her money from insider trading in Congress, or, as we hope she's going to lose, and as of this recording, she is losing, but we're waiting for the last vote to be counted, because that's how we roll. Democracy. Or she, has to change careers and join the OnlyFans revival tent with so-called General Michael Flynn, in which she will make a lucrative fortune. She'll make a lucrative career doing that. It's the money. And Republicans should rue the day that Citizens United finally and fully turned their party over to the grifters. just as they should rue the day SCOTUS gave their base what their base said they wanted since 1973. The driving fundraiser and vote getter for 50 years for the GOP has been abortion.
Yep.
You put a fetus on an envelope and you mail it out and you make $1 million.
A license to print money.
It's a license to print money.
And the Supreme Court took their license away.
It took their license away. The dog caught the car. Absolutely.
And the Supreme Court woke up a whole bunch of people who thought their rights were safe, men and women.
Yep.
Well,
all right, Driftglass, let's do a news roundup.
Okay. You want to hear about President Joe Biden?
Sure.
What all the gloating and end zone spiking the ball he did after the election? This is from President Joe Biden. He said it was a good day for democracy, and I think it was a good day for America. So, goddamn him and his huge ego.
He also said, let them fight.
Let them fight.
He didn't put it that way, but he said it'll be fun to watch Trump and DeSantis fight each other.
Well, that's what
There's the meeting of a mind.
AOC and the squad told him to say that because he is the captain of the left wing of his party.
He's just a puppet for the AOC wing. I got it.
Everyone knows this. Everyone knows that, right?
Norman Ornstein said, among the biggest losers last night were the mainstream media, which bought hook, line, and sinker the idea that we were headed for a giant red wave, unquestioningly embraced bogus polls, and fell back into the herd mentality, protecting each other by buying the same conventional wisdom. This reminds me of 2016, Driftglass. Nobody could have predicted this.
Nobody could have.
Because they were all saying the same thing, right?
It's all crazy. Nobody could have known this.
Two other elements. When Joe Biden gave a stirring talk about the importance of protecting democracy, the response from journalists was snarky. Why isn't he talking about what matters to voters? And the same journalists, mostly white, mostly men, dismissed the importance of Dobbs. Now, will they learn a lesson from this? No. Because speaking of people who survive on each other's farts.
Yeah.
I talked to a leading Republican. Republicans will tell you.
Yeah, they will. Well, and all over, the Bulwark podcast after Joe Biden's speech was wrong guy, wrong speech. And this was Mona Charon's shitty podcast. It might have been a good idea to do this at some point, but Biden was the wrong messenger. This is just the wrong time for such a speech. And just this whole kind of Democrats should fight. Okay, here's a Democrat fighting. Oh no, he shouldn't fight like that. He shouldn't, talk about democracy. I mean, people don't give a shit about democracy. And how dare he give a speech about democracy being under threat as, while there are politics happening. Well, it just, there's no satisfying these people because they always have to hate Democrats first. Speaking of people who hate Democrats and who are obviously not who they say they are.
Yeah, 88% of evangelical Christians voted for Herschel Walker, the abortion funder, not Raphael Warnock, the candidate who has devoted his adult life to Jesus Christ and the ministry.
Yeah, just meditate on that for a while.
Yeah.
This is not a news headline, but it's a fact. Kevin McCarthy is currently preparing to be ground to hamburger by the Freak Show caucus in his own party.
And the Freak Show caucus has the grinder ready, too.
They do. One step out of line, man. One step out of line. Everyone in that party, every crackpot in that party, and they're all crackpots, all of them, are now Joe Manchin because they can claim whatever they want as the terms of going along with whatever it is they want. If they want to impeach Jesus, Kevin McCarthy has to go along with it, or they will take his ass out behind the chemical shed, dispose of his body, and Marjorie Taylor Greene or some other lunatic will take over because the mob will not settle.
But that's the difference between the parties. Think about this. If you have a grifter party where each individual's goal is to gain the spotlight, an interview on Fox, and money from nut jobs, you don't care. You're not trying to govern. You're not trying to accomplish anything except lining your pockets. And so going after Kevin McCarthy is an easy call. The huge difference between a House with a one-vote Republican majority, where Kevin McCarthy gets ground to hamburger, and a Democratic Congress with a one-vote majority, where Nancy Pelosi has everybody in line and gets 211 bills passed in one term, which she did, because the goal is not grifting. The goal is governing.
Well,
and so the discipline of the Democratic House, I'm sorry, it's amazing what Nancy Pelosi is able to accomplish with her caucus. And it's not like there aren't independent people within that caucus.
Oh, plenty of them. They
want to accomplish things. And it's about deal making and getting things done. So speaking of getting things done, Gretchen Whitmer, she vaults into the national spotlight, we hope, with a double-digit re-election win. Her legislature got the maps fixed. They have fair maps in Michigan. And that made all the difference. That's the difference between Texas and Georgia and Florida and Michigan.
Well, and Michigan, one other thing, if I'm not mistaken, the Michigan legislature will be in Democratic hands for the first time in 38 years.
Because they fixed the maps. Because they fixed the maps. They fought for legitimate electoral maps. That's why.
Mm-hmm. Well, no one wants to do that, Blue Gal. Just ask the Forward Party. No Democrat wants a fair election.
Bad night for the Forward Party.
Yeah, well, they're claiming credit everywhere. Everyone loves a winner, and everyone claims to be the deciding factor in every election.
Yeah.
We know that in Illinois, especially in our county, you and I were the deciding factor in most elections. So, here's the thing. Inflation has dropped. Did you know that, Blue Gal?
No.
Yeah. Inflation has dropped 2% since July.
2%. Isn't that weird?
Yeah. You'd think that would be giant screaming headlines everywhere, but it's not for some reason.
It is on Fox Business. Because the market went up something like 650 points today. Oklahoma elected a Democratic district attorney.
Isn't that amazing? Every
abortion measure that was on the ballot across the country expanded access to abortion or stopped restrictions on abortion.
Yep. I'd like to add to that. It's not in our notes, but I do. This is a reminder that you and I spent a little time in Kansas on our journeys out west. And every Democratic ad we saw either on television or in our room or when we were eating in the cafeteria or the little lunch area or breakfast area or on the road, every one of them took Sam Brown back, who destroyed that state, and hung it around the necks of every Republican like a dead possum and said, and the ads were, I will never forgive Sam Brownback for what he did to the state. I will never forget that asshole over here stood next to him and was okay with every bit of it.
And is still proud of him. Yep.
And while everyone else, this is the part about remembering things that's so dangerous. People remember Sam Brownback in Kansas as a disaster. And everyone else in the universe, including Republicans in Kansas, want to pretend he never happened or it was some anomaly. Smart Democrats said, no, fuck no. He killed this state, and that asshole right next to him is now running for office on his agenda.
On his platform,
I'm a nurse, I'm a teacher, I'm a whatever. I'm a normal citizen like you.
I'm a mom, just like yourself. Yes.
Absolutely.
It was women in those ads talking about schools.
Yep. And
we
never
know what
forgiving.
Sam Brownback did to schools. I'm a teacher, I'm a mom, just like you.
Yep.
I'll never let that happen again. And Joe Smith over here stood next to Sam Brownback and backed him up the whole way and still thinks he's a good guy. We're not going to have that. We're never going back to that.
And it worked because they told the truth. They told the truth with a kind of an edge in their voice, and it worked.
And we need that in 2024. We need ads like that about Donald Trump.
Well,
we need moms saying, I remember when Donald Trump tried to take away my health insurance. When Donald Trump tried to take away my kids' health insurance. And we're never going back to that. We're never going back to we're never going back to Republicans threatening my Social Security, my Medicare, my health insurance. And just plain folks ads. That's what we need. Yep.
A key to that is going to be Georgia.
Yeah.
Georgia's real close right now, and it's going to be headed for a runoff because nobody hit 50%, and you need that to win outright. And the runoff between Raphael Warnock and Herschel Walker will take place on December 6th, and this is the Senate majority potentially at stake for the second straight election cycle. Georgia law requires a runoff if no candidate clears 50%. There's about 35,000 votes separating them as of this writing. And so very likely, or at least it's possible, unless Democrats pick up 2 between now and Saturday or Sunday in states that are still being counted, it's going to come down to Georgia again. And that means postcards to voting. That
postcards to voters.
It also means Stacey Abrams doing what she does better than almost anybody else, which is organizing and getting people out to vote. It also means reminding people much more than already happened what a complete hypocritical disaster Herschel Walker is.
Mm-hmm.
You know what? And you know what? Hey, look, Republicans, you got the House, man. You can hold us crazy liberal commies in check with just the House. You don't need the Senate. Do you really want to go to your grave having elected the worst, most incompetent, most deranged, most hypocritical, abortion-loving lunatic in history? Do you want that on your conscience when you go in front of the pearly gates? I don't think so. But anyway.
I think I said this on last week's podcast. I have a relative who says, I understand some people have to have an abortion. I just don't like women using it for birth control, which nobody does.
No.
You know who uses abortion as a birth control? Herschel Walker does.
I know one guy. I sure know one guy. Mm-hmm.
At least one, maybe two. Donald Trump had paid for a reported 8 abortions in the 80s. If you just hand her $700 and never have to wear a condom, hey, worth it.
And 88% of the evangelical Christians voted for Herschel Walker. 88% of
and those who were too moral to do that voted for the libertarian.
Yeah, I know.
Because
you can't vote for the communist.
Man. Okay, so it's Illinois. We're from Illinois. Right. We're proud to be Illinois Democrats.
We are
very proud, and we have a lot to be proud about. Everybody here won. Pritzker won governor. Tammy Duckworth won senator. Nikki Budzinski. Bye-bye, Rodney Davis.
Bye-bye.
Your Nazi lady, your Nazi primary winner, she won.
Yeah,
in her Nazi district, gerrymandered Nazi district. Kwame Raoul, he's the attorney general. Very cool guy. Mm-hmm. Alexei Janulius.
Now, you saw Kwame Raoul the other night, right?
I did. Monday, we saw him speak. He was talking about how he is suing in federal court to get the ERA passed.
That's right.
Go figure.
Because Illinois is where it died.
Yeah. Alexei Janulius is Secretary of State, and he's a personal friend of Barack Obama's. He's going to count the votes in Illinois.
If you give him a nickel, he will tell you how well he knows Barack Obama.
How he played basketball with Barack Obama for 5 cents. He'll tell you that.
The whole story.
And Doris Turner, we love her. She's our state senator, and she's just such a hard worker. We're so proud of her.
She is.
It was a sobering reminder. We still live in Trump country because in our county, all these candidates except Budzinski and Turner lost. And Budzinski and Turner only won by 1,000 votes each.
Yeah.
I think in our precinct, Budzinski won.
I'm pretty sure. Because it's our precinct. We live in
kind of a educated precinct. But it was tight. It was tight. And this district has been gerrymandered as much as it possibly can to get a Democrat elected, and it worked. We do not believe in gerrymandering, but we also don't believe in unilateral disarmament. This is why our cornfield resistance predictions and advice are always so much more accurate than Beltway pundits, because we actually live here.
Yeah. We actually know these people, and we know what they think, and we know how they operate, and we know how they vote, and we know why they vote that way. And I swear to God, Chris Cillizza has never met any of these people, has no idea who they are. And he just huffs David Brooks's farts and repeats in slightly dumber language what David Brooks said yesterday.
Yeah.
Now, across the river from us in Missouri, where youngest child goes to college, a woman named Jessica Piper ran for state representative, and she lost. And she lost by a lot. She lost by 44 points, which would crush me. Now, she seems still very enthusiastic and very up on democracy, but 44 points is nothing to sneeze at. Now, she knocked on, over the course of her campaign, something like 5,000 doors. And she wrote a thread about what Democrats running for office in Trump country run into. And
it's a horror story.
It's a
horror story.
She put it up on Twitter, and I'm just going to read a couple of tweets, and then we'll link to it in our podcast notes. She went to a woman's house. The woman asked if I was a D or an R. She immediately handed back my literature and said she was a Christian and couldn't vote for the Democrats. She then said she'd heard I was a teacher. Her kid's school was just a 4-day school. And she said, there's something you can do about our schools. And I was hopeful that she would talk about getting the funding for schools so they could stay in school for 5 days. And that was not what she cared about. She said legislatures should be working to mandate prayer in classrooms. That was her priority. Mm-hmm. She says, I talked to a man who said that if a woman dies of an ectopic pregnancy, it's God's will. Another man told me that if a child who had been raped and impregnated should have to deliver the pregnancy because, quote, a baby shouldn't suffer for another person's crimes. An elderly woman sent my postcards back to me with Biden's demon rat scrawled across my face. A man who I knew, I had his kids in class, sent me an email hoping, quote, my soul would forever rest in hell for murdering babies. I talked to a woman at her door who said she had heard Democrats are releasing murderers onto our streets. I asked for an example, and she cited a Fox News story. She also thought Biden was in control of gas prices and setting high grocery prices to starve the elderly. And she goes on and on and on.
I don't mean to laugh. That's just horrible.
Well, yeah. Now, how different is that than Barack Obama has a secret plan in the Affordable Care Act to murder your grandma through death panels?
Hillary Clinton is drinking the blood of babies to keep her skin young. Yeah. I mean, it's the same thing. Yeah.
And so if you're out there still thinking, well, Democrats just need to message better. Fuck you.
No.
Fuck you.
It doesn't work with those people. It doesn't work.
Yeah. These people are lost causes. They are fucking livestock. And I want them to have long and happy, healthy lives with 5-day-a-week schools and clean water and air, but I'm never going to get them to support or vote for that. So give up on them. Write them off. Cut them out of your life and focus on the people you can actually convince. You know, like all the Gen Xers who saved this election.
Saved this election. Saved democracy. Right.
So
Gen Zers.
Gen Zers. Gen Xers, they didn't do shit.
They didn't shit. Us Gen Xers didn't do shit.
No.
Yes, we did.
Yes, we did.
I got ballots to 3 Gen Xers.
You did.
And made sure that the 3 Gen Xers turned them in. Yes.
Yep. And I looked over their shoulders and made sure they voted the right way. So,
no, you didn't.
No, I didn't. No, I don't care.
Well, you don't care, but also we didn't have to.
No, we raised them right.
They never vote Republican in their whole life.
Darren Bailey wants to do what? No.
Junior dude did text youngest child in Missouri and said, "Hey, weed's legal now in your state."
Whoa, that turned her right around.
That was I don't know how she responded to that. I'm not going to get involved in that conversation. That's for siblings to talk about.
I can say this. At no point in my youth at that age did my brother and I ever exchange notes about where you could buy legal weed, and my mom going, well, that's cool. No, that was not part of my upbringing.
That did not happen.
No.
Well, I think Junior Dude is going to wind up doing a weed network. There's going to be something like the Food Network. There'll be the Weed Network.
Mm-hmm.
And Junior Dude will be driving around the country in a red convertible doing the weed version of diners, drive-ins, and dives. He'll be the Guy Fieri of pot.
Yeah.
I can see that.
I can absolutely see that. A lot of my friends tell me when I stop into Portland, go to Joe's Crab Shack and the weed shop right down the street. Joe's Weed. And you walk in and Joe's preparing his daily, whatevers. His daily tinctures and
tinctures,
Joe, this tastes great. What? Of course, you can't smoke the pot in the same kind of capacity as Guy Fieri eats the food. You have 20-minute episodes and then everybody falls asleep. But
takes a nap.
Yeah. Well, do it in the right order. You go to the weed shop first, then you go to Joe's Crab Shack.
Right. Mm-hmm. With the munchies. There you go. Each week we post to our Facebook page and website an internet kitty sent in by you, the listeners. This week's internet kitty is Maya. Maya is a lovely young Siamese cat, and she has a new bedspread for the winter that is soft and warm. She's just a lovely cat. And of course, Maya eats freshly poured cat food, our fake sponsor. Whether you serve pet store perfection or dollar store dreck, your cats will sit on the kitchen floor and demand that the food they eat is only freshly poured. Freshly poured, freshly poured. Oh, my Lord, it's freshly poured. And you can visit Maya at our Facebook page or website. And you can send your internet kitty, dog, or other pet to us at our email address, proleftpodcast@gmail.com, where you can also write to both of us. Feel free to write us. We love hearing from you. Be aware that if you write to us at any of our addresses, we reserve the right to read your email or U.S. Postal Service. Go, Postal Unions. Letter on the air unless you say otherwise. #Fire DeJoy. I think DeJoy's his term's going to be up soon. We don't have a DeJoy to kick around anymore.
Oh, we'll find someone else.
Don't forget our gourmet coffee guideline. If you can afford to buy an espresso-based beverage for yourself, buy one for us. This is not charity. This is our job, and we love doing this podcast. Approximately 1% of our listeners support this podcast with a contribution, and you can too. See our website, proleftpod.com, for details. PayPal, postal address, all of it is there at proleftpod.com. Please share our show on social media, and if you love this podcast, please send us $5. That's a great way to let us know you like this episode and to support our podcast work. Hey, Drift Class, how are the Internet Kitties doing this week?
Well, Blue Gal, the Internet Kitties don't want fresh water in their bowl until they're all out of Fox News tears.
Let's think about living. Think about living. Just think about loving. Think about loving. Just think about the hooping and the hopping and the popping and the loving, lovey-dovey. Let's forget about the wine and the crying, the shooting and the dying and the fellow with the switchblade knife. Let's think about living. Let's think about life.
The Professional Left podcast is recorded under a Creative Commons license, copyright 2022, DGBG Productions Incorporated.